Fan del wrestling, ma soprattutto fan di The Shield of Sports. Io sono Bruno Giuliani e come sempre vi ricordo che il nostro podcast è disponibile in formato video su YouTube con le grafiche e le statistiche realizzate dal nostro Leonardo Ungherini ed è disponibile in formato audio su Spreaker, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcast e TuneIn. And if you didn't understand a single word of what I just said, I remind you that our podcast is available in video format on YouTube and in audio format on Spotify, Spreaker, Google, Apple Podcast, and TuneIn. Joining me today is a German wrestler, The Rotation.
I think that's my cue now. Okay, hello guys. I'm The Rotation from Germany. As I got introduced already, I'm very happy to be here, and yeah, I would say it's great to have you around, but I can't see you. So you just hear me, and I hope that you enjoy listening to us.
So let's take a big step into the past, and let's talk about what made you start wrestling and where did you start?
So what definitely made me start wrestling was seeing Paul London in 2006, 2007. He teaming up with Brian Kendrick, they were always the underdogs. That made me fall in love with pro wrestling. And then, I mean, as every young boy with some friends who are addicted to sports, or rather trying than watching, we started backyard wrestling, like pretty much every wrestler nowadays. And then when I was 16, when I was 15, I saw that Paul London had an appearance in a German wrestling promotion called Westside Extreme Wrestling, and I had to go to this show because he was the one who made me fall in love with pro wrestling. So I definitely had to see him live in action, and yeah, so I traveled all the way to Oberhausen, Germany, to Westside Extreme Wrestling, and from the first match on, I fell in love with this promotion, and I wanted to stay in that ring in the very same arena as well. So I wanted to contact them, and then they told me I needed to be 16, so I had to wait a bit. And then yes, when I turned 16 in 2011, I started my journey in the Westside Dojo, which was based in Oberhausen, or back then when I was starting was in a town nearby called Bottrop, but here in this area pretty much every major city is nearby, so that doesn't really matter. So I always started in Oberhausen. And yeah, so that was my way how I joined pro wrestling. So Westside Extreme Wrestling and the Westside Dojo, and there I started 10 years ago.
So did you move from Poland to Germany? Am I right?
No, I'm not from Poland.
Okay.
I'm from Germany. So when I was younger, I always took the public transport, which took me lots of hours to get there. So I spent every weekend of my later teen years in Oberhausen, and lots of traveling with trains and buses. And then I moved to this area here about 3.5 years ago because time reasons. And so I'm literally always here in this area. So there was no reason for me to drive back and forth all the time and wasting time and gas and polluting the environment. So I moved to this area here, and now I'm based very nearby Oberhausen, Germany.
So can you tell us more about Westside Extreme Wrestling? Like, how was the training like? What's the word around in Westside Extreme Wrestling?
Westside Extreme Wrestling is the German-based promotion from Oberhausen, or now we are based in Essen. We had our very first show in December 24th, 2000. So about 21 years ago, the promotion started or opened its doors. One notable name in the first show, the first appearance, was a guy named Claudio Castagnoli, who is now well known as Cesaro. He was, for example, in the very first show as well. So the training where I started was the Westside Dojo, which is now the WXW Wrestling Academy. The WXW Wrestling Academy is based in Essen, and we are in Essen since 2006. 2015. And yeah, when I started, it used to be the West Side Dojo, which was in Oberhausen. And the training was rough and, of course, exhausting. And you really had to fight for everything, for every chance you wanted to get. So the coaches back then were Walter, the previous owner of WXW, Christian Jacobi, guys like Malachi Black, like Emil Sitochi, and X-Men Axel Tischer. And yeah, so the training was always on Saturdays and Sundays when I started, and it lasted for like 4 hours each day. So we had to, when we had the chance to train in the ring, we had to build up the ring, break it down, and then the next day build it up again, break it down. That was the common way how we used to train there. And yeah, like whatever you learn in pretty much every serious wrestling school, we just learned the basics: how to bump, how to run the ropes, the absolute basics of handling holds and wrestling on the fly. That's what they taught us mainly in the West Side Dojo.
Okay, I know you have been training under the CZW Academy also, and how was that experience like, even compared to the West Side Extreme Dojo?
That was a while ago. It was also pretty much almost 10 years ago, so that was 9 years ago when I trained there. That was fun. I trained with guys like Drew Gulak, and the training there was fun, but also super exhausting, because I remember I was there in summertime and it was just super hot and humid there. Breathing was very exhausting. But yeah, I learned pretty cool stuff, and that was a great way to connect to people. And I'm still in contact with some of the guys I've trained with, so that was a cool experience.
Did you also wrestle for CZW?
No, I did not. Back then I was just training, and it was just there for training experience.
Talking about your career then as a pro wrestler, you, Mark Benjamin, and Senza Volto are the stable Flip and Fly. Can you tell us how that stable came together?
A promoter in the Netherlands just threw us together. I teamed up with Senza a couple of times. And Mark Benjamin isn't wrestling anymore. And so it was pretty much just that we were fighting for the tag team titles in that promotion, Pro Wrestling Showdown. And a promoter just threw the name for us in the marketing area. And yeah, so we just teamed up for a couple of times. But last time that I've teamed up with Sensas, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh,
so that has been a while.
You planning on getting the stable back together?
I don't think so, because Mark Benjamin is retired, and maybe I'm going to team up with Senza in the future again. I don't know, whatever the future brings. Senza is a phenomenal high flyer, so that was always fun to team up with him. But it's also fun to compete against him. So I don't know, whatever the future brings.
So you wrestled in a lot of places in Europe, and my question for you is this one: like, how does the crowd respond in various nations? Like, when you wrestle in Netherlands, is it different than wrestling in Germany or in France or in the UK?
It is indeed completely different wherever I am. Like, for example, last month I was in the south of Belgium for Bodyzoy, and the crowd there was nuts. They were absolutely crazy. In the Netherlands, there are crowds who are a bit like calmer or watching more precisely than making noises. And then we have in Germany with WXW, when we are touring, that's also always a completely different feeling. I do love to wrestle in Oberhausen, the base of Germany, because Oberhausen crowd is always something very special to me, and they are always appreciating what we are doing in the ring, and then the venue is on fire, and then everything makes more fun, because when the crowd is into it, you also get more into it, and then the whole wrestling thing makes much more fun than it already is.
So for those that doesn't that maybe don't know much about the German scene. Can you describe it to us? Like, what's the German scene like compared to other nations with wrestling?
The German wrestling scene has a very strong core base of wrestling fans, and you know those core fans, and they are the brick or the fundamental of pro wrestling, because they are always attending, and then you get those runaround fans as well, and then they get into it because of those core fans. And the wrestling scene has been growing for the last couple of years. Of course, due to COVID, everything is still kind of weird and not back to normal, but I hope that we get there back to normal very soon, because the wrestling fans in Germany are always great, and it's always fun to wrestle in front of them. And
Okay.
then we have, of course, because I know that you are currently in Ireland, and of course we have fans from the UK attending to the big events, and from Ireland, that's always great to see them as well. And we have all of the fans from around the world coming to Oberhausen or to the big wrestling festivals, and then it's always a great atmosphere, because you have fans from around the world coming together for one big weekend. So this is what's very special for the wrestling fan base in Germany as well, or especially WXW fan base.
But that's awesome. Like having people from all around, like the places, coming to see you. It's like it's a big thing.
It definitely is. Yes, that's kind of a WrestleMania vibe you get there, because you just have to imagine people are just flying across or crossing borders just to see like 20 guys wrestling in front of 1,000 or 1,500 people for one big weekend. That's always super special. It's like the wrestlers coming from all over the world, so other fans coming from all over the world. That makes everything unique in Oberhausen.
It's great. So with this last question, we're going into a break.
Buonasera amici di The Shield of Sport e The Shield of Wrestling, sono Giulio Prosperi, ma vi ricorderete sicuramente di me per qualcosa, chiaramente. Cosa stavo facendo nella doccia? Stavo chiaramente leggendo i nostri magazine, il numero 1 e il numero 2. Perché li stavo leggendo sotto una doccia? Ma perché è sempre il momento e il luogo per leggere i nostri magazine che parlano di wrestling, MMA, sport, da combattimento, arti marziali, insomma, chi più ne ha più ne metta, soprattutto ora che siamo pronti ad uscire con il nostro terzo numero, quello autunnale, quello che ci lancerà nell'Olimpo delle case editrici. E allora fate come me, andate a farvi una doccia e portatevi i nostri magazine. Resistono all'acqua questi? No, non ne sono sicuro, ma li proviamo subito. E ricordate una cosa, quando fate la doccia, svestitevi. Ciao!
And we are back with the rotation. So
Hello, I'm back.
We talked about people coming from all over Europe to see West Side Extreme and to see your matches. And then the COVID happened, the pandemic happened. So I want to ask you, like, what was your initial response to this, and what did you do to reinvent yourself in the pandemic? Because everyone did.
We were lucky enough to have the 16 karat gold weekend pretty much at the last second before the pandemic hit us. And yeah, so then we were on lockdown. There was lots of time to think about stuff, what you really want in wrestling and where you want to be. Luckily with WXW we had the chance to have tapings, so pretty much when everything was shut down we were able to tape some matches in an empty arena set, which then happened like 3 or 4 times in total, those empty arena sets. And yeah, so I was very fortunate to have the chance to even wrestle during the worst times of lockdown. That was a great thing for all of us from the WXW roster. Of course, I was also lucky enough because I'm one of the coaches at the WXW Academy, so I had the chance to work out in there when gyms were closed. So I spent lots of time working out and think about reinventing stuff and how I want to come back and I was thinking about new gear sets. That was my main intention during the lockdowns. And of course focusing on getting better. What we did in the WXW Academy, because our members were not allowed to join the sessions because we were closed. We had online seminars, like me and the head coach. We were running classes, so he was doing two times a week videotapes. So we were studying videotapes together with the students from the advanced classes. And we also had one seminar with Dr. Tom Pritchard from America. He is a very well-known wrestler, as well as a more famous wrestling coach, because he wrote a book about wrestling. And he trained guys like The Rock, and I think Banks as well. So he had lots of well-known wrestlers under his hands. And we had a video seminar with him, or webinar, how you call it. And I was running 2 times a week online workouts with our students. And we did this for like pretty much the whole lockdown phase until we were allowed to reopen in July 2021.
Oh.
Yeah.
So now you're a trainer in the WXW dojo, right?
Yes.
And what is the most important thing you try to teach to your students? I already asked this question to another guy, who is Carlos Romo, who is teaching in Spain, because I'm always curious about like the different type of like mindset that people put into teaching wrestling.
So the most important things are that you are decent, like that you treat everyone with respect. That's what matters the most. And then, of course, wrestling related, what you need is patience, intensity, and you want to make people forget that it's not a real fight, but you want to make them believe that it's real. That's what you need. So intensity is what matters the most.
So you try to like teach about putting the right intensity in everything you do.
Every little second in wrestling matters. So there shouldn't be a second where you're off. So body language, facials, this is what you need. And it just has to look intense the whole time. That you look like a fighter, that you know what you're doing. But with patience comes confidence. So with the time passing by, people who are willing to learn will get that.
So, did you wrestle in Italy?
I did wrestle in Italy already. That was at the very end of 2018 in Torino for Italian Wrestling Stars, IWS.
Okay.
From the Italian Dreams wrestling promotion and his dad. And I was supposed to wrestle for IWA, the Italian Wrestling Association, in August, but that didn't happen because in Germany there was a very dramatic nature catastrophe, which blocked pretty much the roads to get to the airport, and had no chance to catch my flight to Italy. So unfortunate. But I hope that I will come back, or I will come to IWA at some point.
Speaking of IWA, I know you've been a trainer with our own Karim Brigante. Like, what was that experience about?
Great. Karim is super dedicated and super nice, and he did wrestle for us in one of the tapings we had, and he wrestled Mike Schwartz, and I think he did great. And Karim is a great human being and also a great wrestler, and I always enjoy when I see him, because he was in the academy like 2 months ago or last month, and it was great to have him back.
And talking about Italian dedicated wrestlers, I know you wrestled Akira on a couple of times, and
yes, Akira is amazing. Like I wrestled him before his trip to Japan. He was super talented already back then and super young, and then he spent a couple of years in Japan with All Japan, I guess. And I saw him when he came back because he wrestled for WXW as well, and he was in the Bodyzoy show. And Akira is phenomenal in the ring. He's an absolute, he's absolute star potential, and he can be one of the greatest in Europe with the time passes by, because he's still in his early 20s and he's super, super good in this young age.
So while we were talking about the tapings, I remember the thing that WXW is now on the WWE network, and how did that, you know, something about that, like some backstages about how you ended up in the WWE network program?
That's simple. We have a partnership with WWE, so we are appearing amongst other independent promotions on the network. And to me, that was absolutely surreal and super cool to see my face for the first time in the WWE network. That was very special and a really cool moment for me. And so we have a partnership with WWE, and this is why we also got to have roster members of the WWE on our shows.
Did this partnership with WWE also brought like a new fan base to you? Like, did it brought new fans? Did it expand your reach?
I personally can't tell that much about it, because the partnership pretty much happened during the pandemic, or most of it, when we appeared there for the first time, or when. So I can tell in attendance, but I assume because they have a larger audience work, I'm pretty sure that more eyes, or that we have more eyes on us now because of the partnership.
Okay, so we talked about how you started, and then you became a proper wrestler. Then you started training. You managed to wrestle even during the pandemic, which is not something that everyone can say. So what is next for the rotation? What are your plans for the future?
I'm definitely planning to establish myself in WXW more in the upper region. I have never won a title there. I was in the 16 carat tournament last year, which was super cool, but I've never won a title in WXW. So my main goal is to win a title in WXW, and of course to strive there more. And next year, I know our CEO Taslo Jung already mentioned on Twitter that we have planned 22 events for the Q1 of 2022, which is great because we are still in the pandemic and things are still not back to normal. So I'm very looking forward to have those events in the schedule with WXW. And I just want to succeed a lot more with WXW, and of course in the future, whenever I want to win the 16 karat gold tournament. That's my absolutely main goal at the moment in pro wrestling.
So I want to take a page from one of our interviewers here, and I want to ask you this: where do you see yourself in 5 years?
At the top of WXW.
Oh, that's a great answer. You mean like the proper champion, or just in the main event picture?
5 years and having lots of matches in WXW. And of course, then in 5 years, I hope that we have even larger crowds than we used to have pre-pandemic. I want that WXW succeeds even more. Of course, I want to remain as the WXW coach, or as an academy coach in there as well in the next 5 years. So hopefully things stay the same and just get better.
But I hope for you that this is your actual 5 years future. So with this last question, we are done for this little interview. And we'll see all you again next time.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you.
And remember that we are the shield of wrestling.